The Young and the Restless spoilers shock Wednesday full August 13, 2025. Kyle spent the morning reconstructing a truce with his father only to watch it fray thread by thread the longer they spoke, two men circling the same old fault lines with new words, pretending the fresh polish on their piece could hold under the weight of pride and history. The conversation began with strategy and ended with posture, a quiet warning that balance is not the same as repair. And when the door finally closed behind him, he carried the brittle charge of that room into the rest of his day like static that would not discharge no matter how much ground he covered. Elsewhere, the city made a softer kind of noise. Claire and Victoria found each other in the ordinary sanctuary of a late-morning check-in, the kind that starts with logistics and ends with the truth. They had both lost something recently that refused to stay tucked inside a single sentence, a loss that rearranged hours and blurred edges. And the simplest comfort was comparison, the reminder that grief feels less like drowning when another swimmer keeps pace. They were good together in this season. Steady, practical, protective in the ways people become when they know what crumbles under pressure and what doesn't, yet even inside that comfort lived the questions neither could dismiss. Was proximity enough to outlast loneliness? Was familiarity a bridge or a loop? Was leaning on what you had the same as choosing what you wanted? Claire told herself she had Kyle to lean on, at least in the structural sense of how families and companies arrange themselves when storms come through, and that mattered. Victoria, stripped suddenly of the promise she had been building toward, admitted that the craving she felt wasn't for spectacle but for the simple gravity of being chosen without conditions. That admission was as brave as any public decision she had ever made, and it sat between them like a small, honest fire. Afternoon became evening, as it always does, and with evening came the event everyone attends because it is the easiest way to be seen doing the right thing, a benefit folded into a networking dinner at society, the light calibrated to flatter, the music turned just low enough to deny intimacy while pretending to offer it. Claire arrived on schedule, threaded herself through conversations that performed care, and told herself the room would behave, because sometimes the most you can hope for is neutral weather. She was not looking for Kyle, she was not avoiding him either. The truce they had negotiated lately was built on a mutual appetite for calm and the illusion that calm could be constructed from willpower alone. She moved toward the bar to order water, a small vow she had made to her own clarity, and that was when the room repositioned itself around a single, unignorable picture: Kyle, not alone, Kyle with Audra. Kyle closing a distance that did not belong to him in public, Kyle's mouth on Audra's as if the evening were private, as if the past weeks had been practice for this exact rehearsal, as if humiliation were a currency he had the right to spend from her account. For a beat, Claire felt nothing at all, which is its own kind of pain. Then sensation rushed in with professional efficiency, heat at the base of her neck, the bright awareness of being watched. The sting of recognizing that the worst parts of a person's character are always the parts that insist on an audience. She did not drop her glass. She did not flee. She stood still long enough to confirm what she was seeing, long enough to ensure this was not an angle or a misread, and then she stepped sideways into a strip of shadow that belonged to no one. The humiliation was his to own, not hers. The narrative would try to borrow her face, but the facts were simple. What people do when they think they can get away with it is who they are. Nate was in the room, too. Of course he was, because the city's constellation always tightens at moments like this. He arrived late, eyes tired in the way of a man doing too many jobs and trying not to make any of them into a refuge. He saw Kyle first and, out of habit, approached with the brisk, civil energy of someone who refuses to let gossip write his lines. There was a short exchange that looked like it belonged to business until the camera inside his chest found its focus and the background snapped forward. Audra, fixed beside Kyle, the old electricity between them humming as if nothing had ever tripped the breaker. Once noticed, it could not be unseen. Nate's posture recalibrated. He said what needed saying and nothing more, pivoted on instinct toward the table where his girlfriend was waiting, and sat down with the kind of care that announces bad weather without making it a threat. Would Victoria hear about it from him or from the room? Would either answer feel like betrayal? This is the arithmetic of nights like these. The event has a program, but the real show happens in people's throats and hands. Across the space, Victoria had already absorbed more than the room intended to tell her. She was good at reading the language of angles, the way heads tilt for fresh information, the way laughter slides sideways when shock enters the bloodstream, and long before Nate reached her chair she knew the dangerous shape of the evening. She did not panic. Panic is noisy and gives away your position. She made the table a quiet island, asked the kind of questions that invite honesty without forcing it, and when Nate arrived she placed her hand on the table, palm down, a simple signal that said both trust and time. Whatever passed between them did not belong to the circumference of strangers. It did, however, belong to the pattern they had been studying together for months. What happens when old heat returns to the room in a new shape? What happens when loyalty is not a slogan but a practice? What happens when information arrives inconveniently and still must be carried like the truth it is? Kyle, meanwhile, recovered with the reflex of someone who has never accepted that cause and effect applies to charm. He wiped his mouth as if that were the problem, put distance between his body and Audra's with an exaggerated care that played as contrition to anyone willing to be convinced, then searched the room for an angle that would let the scene belong to someone else. There is always a way to spin, he believed, there is always a counter-narrative waiting for the first confident voice. But the problem with public moments is that they graft themselves to reputation, and reputation is a chorus that resists solo revisions. Jack's morning conversation returned to him now as a colder version of itself, not warning, not guidance, but echo, and under the noise he heard the steady percussion of consequences catching up to a pace he had misjudged. Claire did not move toward him. She did not move toward Audra. She did not move toward Nate and Victoria, though her first soft instinct was to protect the part of Victoria that had not asked to be included in this scene. She chose a simple route instead. She paid for her drink, stepped outside into air that belonged to no one, and let the city reset the scale inside her head. Leaving is not defeat, sometimes it is just accuracy. On the sidewalk, the night felt honest in a way the room had refused to be. She texted Victoria a single line. Available if needed, no details, and then put her phone away. The humiliation had been public, the recovery would be private. She would not carry Kyle's spectacle into her next hour. Inside, the narrative branched. A cluster of onlookers converted conjecture into content. A few friends took the long route around the room to avoid stepping in the puddle of someone else's choices. Nate, after the first exchange with Victoria, returned to the work of existing in a room that suddenly wanted his reaction for sport. He declined to perform and did not abandon his girlfriend to the rumor mill. Victoria, who has never been weaker for being tender, stored the facts and refused to make a decision on adrenaline. There was a time when she would have attempted to fix the entire tableau from her chair. Tonight she understood that stewardship of one's own perimeter is not selfishness, it is oxygen. By the time Kyle looked up again for the next story to live inside, the cast had thinned, the lights had gentled, and the night had begun to tell the truth to anyone still listening. Truce is not immunity. A father's warning morning does not cancel an evening's evidence. The balance he thought he had recovered was not a position, it was a practice, and practices fail when performed without principle. He would wake tomorrow and attempt to rename what happened. He would claim misunderstanding, momentum, misread signals, 100 small errors that somehow never quite found a way to land on him. But the important thing had already happened. Claire had declined to be the stage. The list itself is more than just a set of errands or symbolic gestures. It's a narrative map that will weave them through the lives of others in Genoa City, most notably Daniel Romolotti and Lauren Fenmore. Daniel's presence will not only ground the couple in family connections but also serve as a bridge between Christine and Danny's long history and the present-day dynamics shaping the younger generation. Lauren's involvement adds another texture entirely. She's both a confidant and a voice of experience, someone who understands the complexity of balancing romance, public image, and the quiet truths you never speak to anyone outside your inner circle. Her conversations with Christine, in particular, promise to offer a kind of emotional shorthand that only old friends can share, the kind of exchanges that remind long-term viewers of the deep roots these characters have in each other's lives. For viewers who have been longing for a softer, more romantic thread amid the business rivalries, betrayals, and corporate brinkmanship that so often dominate Wayanar's canvas, this storyline offers a deliberate contrast. The romance between Christine and Danny is not painted in the neon of new passion, but in the steady glow of people who have lived enough to know what they want. That doesn't mean their path will be without hurdles. This is Genoa City, after all. But the weight of their shared past gives them a rare kind of resilience. It also raises the stakes for anything that might try to pull them off course, because their connection is something both of them and the audience know is hard-earned. But romance doesn't unfold in a vacuum, and Genoa City's penchant for weaving disparate threads together ensures that Christine and Danny's happy preparations will be set against a backdrop of unrest. Enter Jill Abbott. Sharp, unpredictable, and armed with information she has been sitting on for far too long. Her reappearance in the week of August 4th to 8th may be brief and channeled entirely through a video call, but Jill's presence, even for a few minutes, has never been about quiet pleasantries. Jess Walton brings the same spark and authority that has defined Jill for decades, and her return is designed to ignite tension rather than resolve it. The setup is deceptively casual. Jill appears from an art gallery, her surroundings pristine and calm, her demeanor suggesting a woman in control of her own narrative. Yet beneath the surface, she is carrying a truth that will land like a hammer when it drops. She has known for some time that Cain Ashby is, in fact, Aristotle Dumas, and she has chosen not to share this with her son, Billy Abbott. This isn't a minor piece of trivia. It's a revelation with the power to reshape alliances, reframe past decisions, and blow open any lingering trust between mother and son. When the truth emerges, Billy's initial reaction is shock, the kind that leaves you momentarily disoriented, as if the ground you were standing on has shifted without warning. That shock hardens quickly into anger, the kind that is rooted in a sense of personal betrayal. It's not just that Cain deceived him. It's that his own mother, someone whose loyalty he assumed as a given, made the choice to withhold the truth. For Billy, this is more than a family squabble, it's a fundamental rupture. He and Jill have weathered storms before, but this one strikes at the heart of their dynamic. Trust between them has always been a delicate balance, sustained as much by shared history as by mutual respect. To learn that Jill has been keeping such a pivotal secret, and for reasons he may or may not understand, is to realize that their balance may have been more illusion than reality. The question becomes not just whether he can forgive her, but whether he even wants to try. Jill, for her part, will undoubtedly have her reasons. She always does. Whether those reasons are rooted in strategy, self-preservation, or a misguided attempt to protect Billy from information she thought might harm him remains to be seen. But Jill's history suggests that she doesn't make decisions lightly, even when those decisions appear reckless from the outside. She's a master at thinking several moves ahead, which means her silence on the matter of Cain's identity likely served a purpose, at least in her mind. That purpose, however, is irrelevant to the wound Billy now feels. Intent doesn't erase impact, and Jill's rationale will have to contend with the simple truth that her son feels blindsided. The ripple effects of this revelation are almost certain to extend beyond the Abbott family. Cain's identity as Aristotle Dumas is not just a personal detail, it's a piece of information that can shift power dynamics in Genoa City's interlocking worlds of business and personal alliances. Anyone with a stake in Jabot, Chancellor, or any of the other corporate empires in play will be watching closely to see how this unfolds. If Billy reacts with open hostility toward both Jill and Cain, it could create fractures in existing alliances or open the door for opportunists to exploit the discord. If, on the other hand, Billy decides to bide his time and play a longer game, that choice will say as much about his own evolving strategy as it will about his relationship with his mother. Thematically, the juxtaposition between Christine and Danny's steady, romantic preparations and the volatile revelations within the Abbott family is striking. On one side, you have a couple deliberately building toward a shared future, tending to the details that will make their wedding a celebration of their resilience. On the other, you have a mother and son whose shared past is suddenly under scrutiny, their future relationship now a question mark. Both arcs are about trust. How it's built, how it's tested, and what happens when it's broken. The difference lies in the direction each story is heading. Christine and Danny are moving towards something, while Jill and Billy are in danger of moving away from each other. What makes this moment particularly potent is how easily these storylines could intersect. Christine and Danny's preparations will inevitably draw them into contact with other major players, and in Genoa City, secrets have a way of slipping into conversations where they don't belong. If the matter of Kane's identity surfaces in a setting where multiple stakeholders are present, the fallout could be immediate and wide-ranging. Jill's secret, once confined to her and a select few, could become public property, forcing everyone connected to her to choose sides. Billy's next moves will be crucial. He could confront Jill head-on, demand answers, and make his anger known in no uncertain terms. He could channel his frustration into action against Kane, using the revelation as leverage in whatever broader games he's playing. Or he could retreat, bide his time, and look for the angle that will allow him to come out ahead without tipping his hand too early. Each choice carries risks, not only for his personal relationships but for his standing in the business world. In Genoa City, perception is often as important as reality, and how Billy handles this will shape how others see him moving forward. For Jill, the path ahead is equally fraught. She'll have to decide whether to double down on her decision to keep the secret, framing it as a calculated move for the greater good, or to acknowledge that she miscalculated and attempt to repair the damage. The problem with the latter approach is that apologies in Genoa City are rarely straightforward, their currency, and like all currency, their value depends on timing, delivery, and the willingness of the other party to accept them. Jill's skill at navigating complex situations is undeniable, but even the best strategist can be undone by the emotional volatility of family. Meanwhile, Christine and Danny will continue moving through their pre-wedding checklist, each completed task a small step toward the stability they've chosen for themselves. But stability in Genoa City is never entirely secure. The same currents that threatened to pull Jill and Billy apart could, under the right circumstances, reach into Christine and Danny's orbit. All it takes is one piece of information, one misinterpreted exchange, to shift the tone from celebration to suspicion. The beauty of YNR at its best is its ability to let these storylines breathe independently while also setting them on a collision course. Christine and Danny's arc offers a reprieve from the relentless scheming, but it's not immune to it. Jill's return is brief, but the reverberations of her secret will echo far longer than her actual screen time. And Billy, caught between outrage and strategy, will have to decide whether his loyalty lies with family, with business, or with his own sense of justice. In the end, the audience is left with a set of tantalizing questions. Will Christine and Danny make it to their wedding without interference, or will someone, intentionally or not, pull them into the maelstrom? Will Jill and Billy find a way back to trust, or has this latest revelation crossed a line that can't be uncrossed? And how will Kane, the man at the center of this secret, navigate the sudden attention that comes with having his true identity dragged into the light? The answers will unfold in the coming weeks, but one thing is certain: in Genoa City, the past is never as far behind as you think, and every return, whether it's a romantic couple ready to say I do or a matriarch armed with a dangerous truth, has the potential to reshape the entire landscape.